Saga of Ragnar Loðbrok, Chapter 13. Then they decided among themselves that they should harry in the southern kingdom, and that Sigurd Ormur Aga, Randalin's son, went with his brothers on every raid after that. In these raids they strove against every town which was strong, and they fought so that none could prevail against them. And then they heard that there was one town that was both strong and full of hardy men, and then Ivar said that he wanted to head for there. And this is said of what that town was called and who ruled over it. The chieftain was called Vifil, and his namesake was a town called Vifilsburg. Then they traveled with war shields, so that they desolated all the towns that they happened upon, until they came to Vifilsburg. The chief was not at home in his town, and many of his troops were away with him. Then they set up their tents on the plains that were about the town. They were peaceful during the day when they came to the town, and they held a talk with the townsmen. Ragnar's son asked the townsmen whether they would rather give up the town, and in return they would all be granted peace, or rather test their forces and their hardihood, and their men would receive no quarter. But they responded quickly and said that the town would never be so overcome. But before that happens, you must try us and show us your valor and zeal. Then the night passed, and the very next day they went to strive against the town, but could not overcome it. They sat around the town for half a moon, and they strove every day with different strategies that they might get the town. But it happened that they were no nearer victory after a long while, and then they decided to turn away from there. And when the townsmen became aware that they were planning to turn away from there, then they went out into the town walls and spread out their valuable cloth and all those clothes, which were the finest in town, over the town walls, and they laid out their gold and their valuables, which were the most expensive in town. And then one of their troop took up the words and spoke. We thought that these men, the sons of Ragnar, and their troops were hardy men, but we can see that they have not come nearer to victory than others. Then after they shouted at them and beat upon their shields and egged them on as best they could. And when Ivar heard that, he was so greatly startled that he fell into a great sickness, so that he might not stir, and they had to wait until it came about that he recovered or he died. He laid there all day that evening, and spoke not a word. And then he spoke with those men who were with him, saying they should tell Bjorn, Hvitserk, and Sigurd, and all the wise men, that he wanted to hold a talk with them. And when they all came and were in one place, those who were the greatest leaders among the troops, then Ivar asked if they had devised any tactic which would likely to succeed more than those which they had tried before. And then they all answered that they did not have such wit in these matters, so that they might devise a tactic that would be successful. Now, as often, you're the one whose advice would be useful, they said. Ivar answered thus, One plan has come to me in my mind, which we have not tried. There is a large forest not far from here, and now, when night falls, we shall travel from our tents secretly to the forest. But we will leave our war tent standing here, and we come to the forest, each man shall bind branches for himself. And when that is done, we shall attack the town from all sides, and strike fire in the wood, and there will be a great blaze, and the town walls will then lose their lime because of the fire. And we shall then bring up our war slings and see how hardy they are. And thus it was done. They traveled to the forest, and they were there as long as Ivar deemed necessary. Then they attacked the town in accordance with his arrangements, and when they had struck fire in the large pile of wood, there was so great a blaze that the walls could not stand it, and they lost their lime. Then Ivar's troops brought their war slings up to the town and broke a large gap in the walls, and a battle began. And as soon as the two forces stood openly opposed in battle, then the troops of the townsmen fell. And some fled before them, and some, in the end, fled to their ships. They killed every man's child who was in the town, and they took all the goods and burnt the town before they went on their way. And thus ends chapter 13.